This is the Real Change Wilmington podcast, episode 74, Crafting Community at Southridge Brewing, with our guest today, Alex Rhinehart.
It was, at the time, extremely terrifying, right? Everything I've worked my whole life up to that point, just to walk away from that and literally having zero idea of what was next. But I think it's terrifying, but it's also liberating to take that jump and know that you have built a community of people around you that will catch you if you need to. So when you do that first time, it takes away this idea of living in fear about change.
What is going on, everyone? This is your host of the Real Change Wilmington podcast, Dustin Pierce. Real Change is a positive, constructive, and lighthearted source of local news, events, and resources. On our podcast, we interview leaders of local organizations to help squash rumors and encourage a greater sense of pride in our community. We have a great interview for you today with our guest, Alex Rhinehart, who is the co-owner and brewmaster of Southridge Brewing on South Street here in Wilmington, Ohio. Alex graduated from Wilmington High School and Wilmington College. He has a winding career journey as an athletic trainer and higher education educator. He lived in Hawaii for a bit, but then gave all of that up to start bartending at the General Denver restaurant here in Wilmington. And that's where he developed closer relationships with Brad Hayes and Jen Perky, who are also the co-owners of Southridge Brewing. We had both Brad and Jen on our podcast before to talk about their other local restaurants, Kava House and Trail House. What I really enjoyed about talking with Alex is that he has a very analytical mind and he has a very research-based approach to brewing beer. He considers factors like what's the history of the style of beer he's trying to make and what is a logical and local or unique spin he can put on the beer. And of course, he also considers things like what is missing in the marketplace that could have a demand for his customers. I also really value our conversations throughout the podcast where Alex talks about writing your own story and how your story can change over time. And then at the end, he asks the question, what is Wilmington's identity? And how the answer to that question could help us write our story as a community. So with that, I'll bring in our guest, Alex, and we can get this podcast started. Alex Rhinehart, welcome to the Real Change Wilmington podcast. You are the brewmaster and co-owner of Southridge Brewing. But before we get into that, we'll just get to know a bit about you. So why don't you tell us who you are, where you're from, and...
So I'm a Wilmington-born guy. Actually grew up in the Southridge neighborhood. So graduated from Wilmington High School, went to Wilmington College, left for a few years, then came back to Wilmington to teach at Wilmington College, and then found my way to the GD and been here ever since, and now own a farm out in Martinsville and run Southridge Brewing.
Yeah, you definitely skipped a lot of your story.
That was definitely the nickel version of the story.
Yeah, for sure. Can I ask you a question real quick? Do you know where your name Rhinehart comes from?
Yeah, so it's actually coming from kind of the Rhine region of Germany. So if you trace my lineage back far enough, we're actually kind of that Swiss area that's close to that border. But previous to that, we're coming out of kind of that Dusseldorf region. So we're at the heart of the Rhine, quite literally.
Mm-hmm. And doesn't Rhine mean like body of water or something, or river?
I don't know the exact translation, but I think the translation I've seen is like brave council or something like that.
Brave council.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool then.
Yeah.
Water. That's cool. Because I was wondering that because like there's Rhinegeist and or over the Rhine in Cincinnati.
Yeah. So all that's named after the Westphalia region of Germany because the Rhine River runs through there. So when the German immigrants came over and settled in Cincinnati, they felt like that portion of Cincinnati was very similar to that Rhine region of Germany. So that's why they called it over the Rhine.
That's pretty cool. So you said that you left Wilmington for a few years and you actually went to Hawaii, right?
Yeah. So when I graduated from Wilmington College, I ended up going out to the University of Hawaii at Manoa and worked on my degree out there and taught at the university while I was out there. I lived there for 2 years, or a little over 2 years, and then decided to come back here.
What was the best parts and the worst parts of Hawaii?
Hawaii is a beautiful, beautiful place. The cultures were great. And really kind of the reason I went out there was the culture. because I knew I kind of wanted to end up back in this Midwest area again. And, I never wanted to be older and have kids and my kids be like, well, you've just lived in Wilmington your whole life. What did you ever do? So, when I was 22, I packed up my whole life into 2 suitcases and moved halfway around the world. And to go from a place where, I am the very stereotypical looking person to a place where, I'm walking through the mall and I'm the only tall, white, bearded guy in the mall was great. To be the minority was a great experience. And I always encourage people to do that.
Yeah, for sure. That's better than me. When I graduated college, I was in North Dakota. So it was like the complete opposite of Hawaii.
Right.
It's very cold and snowy. Very different experience.
Oh, but yeah, I love my time in Hawaii. It's a beautiful place. I ended up coming back because, 85 and sunny sounds great, but it gets old quick when you're used to having seasons, especially here in Ohio when we have those big season shifts. So.
So you got your undergraduate at Wilmington College, and then you went to Hawaii, and then did you get a master's degree there?
My master's is from the University of Hawaii, and then I'm ABD with a doctorate from the University of Idaho.
Whoa, what did Idaho come into the picture at?
So when I was working at the University of Mount Union, which is another part of the story.
Okay, wait. Tell it in the order. You came back to like Ohio, right?
Yeah. So I was at Hawaii. I take a job at the University of Mount Union, which is in Northeast Ohio, working with their football team and teaching in their sports med program. So from Honolulu to Alliance, Ohio, worked at the University of Mount Union. While I was there, I started a doctorate of athletic training program that was the first one in the country at the University of Idaho.
Online, I guess?
It was an online program, but I'd spend my summers in Idaho doing hands-on work there. So while I was at University of Mount Union, a job at Wilmington College came back up to return to my alma mater. So I took that, but continued the program out of Idaho. Was working at Wilmington College, and then I told you guys this a little bit earlier, like I had some issues with U.S. healthcare systems and kind of the higher ed system. So I just ended up leaving that career altogether. So
it was like 8 years in the making, right? And you just like forget it.
Yeah. It's one of those things where it was at the time extremely terrifying, right? Everything I've worked my whole life up to that point, just to walk away from that and literally having zero idea of what was next. But I think it's terrifying, but it's also liberating to take that jump and know that you have built a community of people around you that will catch you if you need to. So when you do that first time, it takes away this idea of living in fear about change, because change is terrifying. But when you're okay and comfortable with being uncomfortable, you can make some really cool progress. So, there are tons of people I know that joke that, my resume is 30 pages long, or that I've had 10 careers in a lifetime already. And that, I haven't done these things out of boredom or not being able to achieve things. Like, it's really, I think I'm just not scared to change and tackle something new, which can be really exhilarating and helpful.
Yeah. That was really good. Yeah. Could be like a book or something. Muse had some pretty big issues though with like higher ed and healthcare to like go from a master's degree to a bartender.
Yeah.
Like that's a pretty big jump.
Yeah. And I mean, it wasn't my, that wasn't what I set out to do, right? The U.S. healthcare system is fatally flawed. From a healthcare provider standpoint, we just can't provide good healthcare to patients. And that was really frustrating to me. And then higher ed, we've put kids in really bad spots financially. It's become very much a business, and being able to actually efficiently and thoroughly educate individuals has become pretty hard at the collegiate level. And I applaud the people that are able to still fight through all that and get that done. But I didn't want to have that frustration the whole time. So yeah, I left those industries. And I'd known Jen and Matt at the GD for years, and I just was in there eating dinner after I left the college. And I was just like, hey, can I have a job for a couple of weeks until I find what's next? And
Because they both worked there at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and so Jen hired me on the spot, basically. And I was like, yeah, I'll be here a couple of weeks, and then, we'll find out what's next. And I even started, I was like, I'll just work 1 or 2 days a week, just whatever. 3-4 years later, I've been closing bartender, working 40 hours a week there for years. And it was one of those things that I didn't see it coming, but it was a great job. I actually even took a pretty considerable raise from my professorship job to become a bartender.
It was a raise?
Yeah. A significant one.
Really?
Yeah. Which is another issue with higher ed.
Oh, sure.
So working there gave me the opportunity to do a lot of different things. It gave me time to work on my farm, because I run a perennial agricultural farm out in Martinsville. So I could work on that during the day, bartend at night, and work on some other fun projects along the way.
How did you start your farm? How did you get a farm? Because you had I guess you got a raise, you said. So I was gonna ask, living on the street? What happened to you?
Yeah, so I'm married. My wife has a really good job.
Okay.
And we actually bought the farm, and I was still at the college. So when we bought the place, it was mostly just grass, acres of grass.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up on my grandparents' farm a little bit. I've always been an outdoors guy. If I can be in the woods, I want to be. So kind of another series of events. After we bought the land, we started going to some native food festivals and things like that. And it just kind of kept growing and growing and growing, until I had my permaculture design certificate with the Cincinnati Permaculture Institute. And then I was doing work with the Southern Ohio Chestnut Company and the Camp Washington Perennial Farm down in Camp Washington in Cincinnati. So things just kind of kept building. I kept building this community of people in that sustainable food region. I've known John Brandstrader for years, and he was kind of helped along the process as well. So yeah, as the community of people I knew in the area kept growing, we kept developing our farm with the idea that, when you're planting fruit and nut trees, and some of these nut trees, you might not see a harvest for 20 years or so. You've got to be thinking, what are things going to look like 20 years from now? So the idea of developing this farm so that when I'm ready to retire, I live in a food providing park, basically. So that was the original kind of emphasis of why that whole place started.
Yeah. Question I always ask guests is how they met their spouse.
So my best friend, his name's Casey Hufford. He was from Wilmington. Is when we were both in undergrad still. I was here at Wilmington College, and he went to school at Morehead State. And I would go down to Morehead all the time to hang out with them. And then one day he called me and was like, hey, you want to come down this weekend? I've got somebody I want you to meet. And that was pretty normal, right? He'd meet friends, and he'd be like, hey, let's go hang out this weekend or whatever. So I drive down there, not knowing that it wasn't a group of guys he wanted me to come hang out with. He wanted me to meet this girl. So he introduced me to my wife, Tara, and then the rest is history.
What about her? Why did they want you to meet her for?
So I can have a pretty strong personality, and I can kind of push people pretty hard sometimes. And he felt like she could stand up to me about it. She's a pretty strong-willed person, so he thought it would be a nice counter to me, and he was right.
Nice. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And you have a 3-year-old now.
Yep. And a 3-year-old daughter.
And what are some of your guys' hobbies outside of the farm and this business that's consuming your life now?
Right. Yeah. Right now I'm just at the brewery all the time. So like I said, we love being outdoors. That's one of our big things. We're still big brewery hoppers. Even though we own one, we'd like to go and just kind of hop around to everybody else's brewery, see what they're doing. We have season tickets to the Columbus Crew, so I'm a big soccer fan. So whether it's the Crew or U.S. national teams playing, we're hitting up soccer games all the time.
How's their new stadium?
The Lure.com in Columbus it's a great stadium. It's nice and compact. It kind of reflects a lot of those European stadiums where kind of utilitarian on the outside, but inside it's a great environment. So,
and then were you part of the Trails Coalition?
I was. That's a throwback there. Yeah.
Is it?
I haven't been on that board for a while, but
I just dug it up and put it on my notes. I'm giving it to you.
I was on the Clinton County Trails Coalition for several years, helping develop the trails here in town. And during my time, we started and opened the Fayette Friendship Trails.
Which one's that?
It's the one that goes, was it Borum Road to, can't remember the other one, but out in Sabina.
Okay. Yep. We've had Bruce on the podcast before.
Yep.
He's a good guy. And then were you part of the Wilmington College Theater Program?
Yeah. So when I was in college, I was in the theater program as well. I do summer theater here now. I didn't do it this year because I was kind of a little busy with something else. But yeah, I have a background in theater. Actually, kind of big circular loop a little bit here. I'm a trained dancer. That's why I started musical theater. So I have 14 years of dance training. And Brad Hayes, my business partner, his wife, Trish Hayes, she was the choreographer for the high school shows when I was in high school. And she found out that I could dance, and a high school boy that can dance and can like actually lift people can be a little rare. So she found out that I existed and basically made sure that I showed up to audition for shows in high school, which led to me continuing in college. And then when I left Wilmington College, I took about a 15-year retirement from doing theater. Then I was back here in Wilmington, and a couple years ago in the summer, they did Chicago, which is, for a dancer, is one of the shows, right? So I was like, well, I guess I'll come out of retirement to do this show. So I did Chicago, and then the next year I did Into the Woods. And like I said, I took this year off. But yeah, I have a theater background as well.
Nice. We interviewed Brad and Chin for the Trail House. Brad mentioned your dancing background, and I don't know what that meant at the time. So pretty cool. So that's off of your story. You were, I don't know what part we left off on. You were in Northern Ohio, and you're back down here. No, you're back down here at the General Denver.
Yeah, so it was at the GD, yeah.
Yeah.
So it was at the GD. COVID changed the service industry world.
And the GD sold.
The GD sold, and then just it wasn't the right place anymore. So I left there, was basically unemployed, doing some jobs here and there, doing a lot of perennial agricultural work, picking up jobs. I'm actually neighbors and close friends with Karen and Linford from the band Over the Rhine. They live out by me, so I was doing a lot of work for them, just picking up jobs. But I needed something that was just next. What was the next job? And so Warped Wing posted a job for a brewer and a cellarman, and I just applied. And they brought me in for an interview. That first interview round, it came down to me and one other guy, and the other guy was an internal candidate, which they ended up hiring him. And then 4 weeks later, they called me and they're like, hey, are you still interested? Because we would like to hire you. So I went back, and the guy they hired instead of me, his name's Chris Warman. He's still brewing there. So Chris and I brewed together at Warped for a couple years. Just doing all the production there. And then one day, my wife sends me a text with this job posting, and this brewery in Cincinnati is looking for someone who's a brewer, someone that has sustainable agricultural backgrounds, understands kind of the sustainable food movement in Cincinnati, someone that is kind of community minded. So I take that job posting and I show it to Chris, and he starts reading it. He goes, did you write this for yourself? I was like, I know, right? Like they're looking for me. So I applied to that job. And even when I go interview with Bob and Betty, who own Fibonacci Brewing, they're like, yeah, we wrote this description with the idea that, if you want to find something, you just put it out there. But we didn't think this person really existed because it's so many like just kind of random things together.
Yeah.
They're like, and then you showed up. So yeah, this job is kind of perfect for you. So I took over as the head brewer at Fibonacci, and Bob and Betty were great, giving me kind of the freedom to do whatever I wanted to down there.
Did they were they established?
Yeah. So they had been around for 7 years, I think, 7 or 8 years when I started there. Pretty well established, pretty well respected brewery in Cincinnati. So I kind of honed some of my, foraging and farm to tank recipes and skills there, doing kind of some unique historical styles of things there. And then, so I've known Brad and Jen for years and years and years.
Wait, and you have to know where is Fibonacci at?
They're in Mount Healthy.
Yeah.
So up near College Hill, kind of that northwestern corridor of the city.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt your story.
No, you're good.
Cool.
So I said I've known Brad and Jen for a long time, and we've kind of talked about doing something for years on and off. And
that's how Brad gets you. Because I think he was talking to Jen for a while too about doing something and then like pulled her into Trail House.
Right.
If Brad's talking about doing something, he's pulling you into something in the future.
So we started talking, and again, just kind of a confluence of things started to happen. So we started this conversation in reality of like, let's really kind of start talking about what this means, not just like a joke, hey, we'll open a brewery. We started that kind of last summer and like, well, let's talk, let's try to figure things out. So then come about, I don't know, November-ish of last year, Bob and Betty announced that they're going to sell Fibonacci. So Brad, Jen, and I had been having some more serious conversations about opening a place. So about late December last year, we decided that we're going to do this. So there's, again, a confluence of things happening where my time at Fibonacci is coming to an end because Bob and Betty want to sell.
Did they sell?
They're still up for sale right now. They haven't been sold yet.
Gotcha.
So, my time at Fibonacci is coming to an end. Brausch is closing. We've been working on this plan. All these things are starting to come together.
So this was a plan even before Brausch was going to close.
Yeah. So we actually, we were looking at a few different locations in town, and then Brausch announces that they're going to close and that they're for sale. We went and looked at the building, and then we actually passed on the building the first time we looked at it. And late December, Brad, Jen, and I had a meeting. We had picked out a location in town that we were going to buy a lot on. We were going to build a building, and that was like, I don't know, December 21st or something like that. And we're like, okay, well, we'll come back, start the new year, and we'll get this thing rolling. And kind of a 2-year plan of, okay, we build, we'll get this up and running, all these things. And so maybe like December 22nd, 23rd, Brad calls me and says, hey, just had an interesting conversation with somebody in town. The financials might have changed a little bit on the Brausch building. Let's take a look at it again. So, okay. So we go and look at it and like, well, okay, if we can make this work, with these new financial details, let's make this work. So mid-January, we end up getting the building and then start the renovation process. So from January to June, we're working on getting all the behind the scenes things figured out, all the paperwork, licenses, all that stuff, doing the renovations, and kind of working to get open. And then late June, we finally got open and doing well.
Nice.
So that's the
abridged version.
The Nick Cole story turned into the $20 story.
I mean, we're going to dig into it. So drink up, because I gotta ask this one question before we get into like Southridge Brewing. I almost called it Brausch for a second. I'm sorry. I get so lost in the storytelling.
Yeah.
Can you tell us, like, and I ask this to every guest, like, what's a defining moment of your life that's helped make you who you are or shape your values and personality?
I mean, there are a couple of different examples I could probably give, but I would say it's just that leaving my career, right? Like I actually spoke about this at the high school brought me in earlier this year to be like the commencement speaker for their honors program. And the whole thing was being willing to write a new narrative, leaving my career and learning that change and adapting and not knowing what the next chapter looks like, but being willing to write that next chapter was massively important to me, I think. And it changed how I look at things. It's no longer that fear of, oh, well, everything I've planned doesn't seem to be working. Like, what do I do? Like, you don't worry. You fix it. You write the next sentence. You write the next chapter. And I think if you don't have a little bit of control over what you're doing, you're not going to get to the end of the story.
So being able to have that feeling you can take on challenges gives you that control over your story.
And the story doesn't have to end where you think it's going to end, right? But you just have to be comfortable with writing it.
Yeah.
And I think too often we just get so scared about doing something that we just do nothing and let us be pushed around by whatever the fates may see.
Yeah. Yeah. There was this quote I saw recently. I think it was from Rick and Morty, but I just saw it on Instagram. And it's the one character is telling the other one, things will work out in the end. And if it's not worked out yet, because it's not the end yet. You know?
Yeah.
Kind of reminds me of that. All right. So now let's get back in to Southridge Brewing. So you had these conversations with Brad and Jen. And then what were those conversations like? And then also, I guess the Broush family too was involved in those conversations as well, I would assume, because they still work there too, right?
So Tim was one of the bartenders. Tim was Travis's brother. Travis is the one who owned Broush.
Okay.
Tim worked as a bartender at Broush, and we kept him on as a bartender.
He's the guy with the Hawaiian shirts?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the conversations, like I said, Brad and Jen and I have known each other for years. We've been a part of a kind of a beer share group for, I don't know, probably near 20 years now.
What's a beer share?
So basically, a group of people that get together, everyone brings a different beer and everyone gets a little, like a 2-ounce sample of that beer. And we just kind of sit and talk about it. Right?
Nice.
Just a way to kind of hang out with some friends and talk about beer and enjoy good beer. So we've been doing that for a long time together. And Brad will tell you that he's kind of always had this dream of owning the neighborhood bar.
Okay.
And so we've had these conversations over the years, especially once I started brewing, that I really kind of want to have this community space, and Jen's a great chef, and you make beer, we should do something, right? All of your friends, you have these crazy ideas where you're we should do something, right?
Yeah.
And that's how those conversations started. And then, like I said, as things started falling in line, Jen leaves the GD. I'm the head brewer at a place in Cincinnati, but I'm ready to leave. And all these things that started falling in line, we kind of started looking at each other and going, okay, we should really do this.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the biggest things about us being we should really do this is we felt like there was a niche missing in Wilmington, right? There was this place that needed to be that community hangout space that was providing, great beer, great atmosphere, great food. We didn't see the place we wanted to hang out in town anymore. So, we have the skill set, the three of us, to do this. So if that place doesn't exist, let's make it exist. So that was really kind of the final, okay, we're doing this part of the conversation.
And so are you guys all equal owners in this thing?
Yeah. We all are a third owner.
How does that work? So I own a business, right? I've started things and it's been really messy and you have a budget and it goes over budget. How does that work with 3 people? How do you equally responsible for the building of something new that's messy and changes?
I mean, it takes planning, right? Not only from a legal standpoint of what that looks like, but from an operational standpoint, knowing how things are going to run. And the thing about Brad, Jen, and I is we each have our area kind of expertise. Jen's the food side, I'm the beer side, Brad's kind of that front of house side, and we all respect each other's expertise in that. So, when we're making decisions about food, Jen, that's your decision. And part of the conversation early on is just hey, we trust each other to make these decisions. So, if it's a decision that needs to be made, make it. And then we can talk about it later on. If it's a really big decision about something, I'm going to, spend 30 grand on something. Let's all talk about that. But, my day to day, if I'm ordering, my grain order, which can be expensive, we're not going to sit down and have a meeting about that because they trust me to do what's right. So I wouldn't go into business and do this with just anybody, right? It's a unique set of, 3 people that came together where we all trust each other to do what's right by each other and do what's right by the business. So yeah, if Brad and Jen hadn't been there when I was looking to leave FID, I don't know, maybe I'm writing a different chapter right now. But, we all came together to utilize all of our skill sets as a combined group.
Yeah. What was the budget for the renovations? You sat down, you're like, how much are we going to spend on this?
I can't give you an exact number, but
Yeah.
I will say it was, we tried to do it as efficiently as possible. Brad and I did a lot of the work ourselves. And we're not done yet. We'll be putting an addition on the building to do some production brewing, and that we're working with an architect out in Cincinnati to get that stuff up and running. So it's, the financials are always evolving as we work on these big projects. But I feel like we were pretty efficient with the remodel portion, which is what we wanted to do. We wanted to get the existing building into a spot that we thought was good and get that open, get up and running, and then work on kind of the expansion portion.
Yeah. It has a pretty similar vibe as Broush did. So what was like the things that you focused on to update?
So the biggest thing that we heard from a lot of people was that they didn't like how dark it was inside when it was the previous place. So one of our biggest goals was to lighten it up. A lot of people said that they felt like it previously had a bit of a dive bar feel to it. And we wanted to make it more friendly, more family friendly feeling. So yeah, definitely lightening the place up. We've created different regions of the building. So there's kind of like a nice little lounge area that's got a little darker lighting with some comfy chairs, a fireplace. Then there's kind of a dining area. And then there's an area towards the back that's got like a little kids play table, and it's got like a picnic table feel vibe back there. So it's a little more like younger family oriented back there. So that was the big thing, is we just wanted to make it feel a little more comfortable in there.
So you said you're trying to architect to expand and make like spot for brewing more beer?
Yeah.
So that, don't they? I mean, because they were brewing before, right?
So the production area of the building as it was before we got there was not adequate, which is why we passed on the building the first time.
Okay.
I'm making beer there currently, but there's a certain standard that I operate under in terms of making beer that just can't occur in the building as it is. So in order to fully achieve our plans in terms of beer coming from Southridge Brewing, we need to build a better equipped building to do that. And it will allow us to meet the standard of beer that I expect from us and allow us to grow, to do small distribution and keep up with our demands for beer in the pub itself.
So you need this equipment to have like better tasting beer and also like to can it and distribute it?
So the big thing would be volume wise, to be able to do the volume that we need.
Okay.
But also to do any packaging. So a better system for kegging, to put in a can line, things like that. So there are quality measures in the beer as well that we can improve with the better equipment. But I still think right now that we make very good beer. So
I know that Tin Cap's having a similar like problem right now. They want more space to be able to can and distribute more. I guess work together at a canning facility in Wilmington.
That could be an opportunity.
Let's talk about your other stuff that you offer too. So let's talk about the food. How involved were you with the making of the menu?
So the menu itself is very much just Jen. Like I said earlier, the three of us kind of have our areas of expertise, and Jen's area is obviously the food. She's well respected as a chef here in town. I would say that my role in that was early on kind of helping Brad and Jen understand what the vibes of the brewing industry in the brew pub settings are. Not only had I worked in, those brew pubs for years, my wife and I have been to hundreds, literally, of breweries in Ohio. So understanding what kind of the general feel of things are. So early on, kind of in the food wise, it was just me saying, here's what the vibe of Southridge Brewing looks like. Here's how we fit into the industry. So with that, what do you want to do? And Jen was like, well, I starts explaining the menu. It's like, so it sounds like it's upscale American pub food. She's like, yeah, that's what we are. So kind of after we established upscale American pub food, I'm out of the food game, right? That's all Jen to execute her expertise.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's the vibe? I mean, one of your beers is called Grandpa.
Yep.
So like, what kind of vibe is that?
So that beer actually has a really nice story to that name. So American brown ales are a style that aren't really brewed that often, but are enjoyed stereotypically a lot by kind of middle to older aged white guys, right? So that's not where the name comes from, but stereotypically, Brad is a middle to older white guy. Brad loves brown ales. So I told him that I had this really great brown ale recipe that I would make for him. So one day when we're in there renovating, it was me and Brad and my daughter Beckett were in there. And Brad takes a break from what he was working on, and he takes Beckett into the private dining room, and they were just playing in there. And so Brad gets done. It's like, hey, I got to go back and keep working. So he goes back to work, and I go in there and I'm hanging out with Beckett. And she looks at me and she goes, let's go find Grandpa. And I said, Grandpa's not here, thinking she's referring to my dad. I said, Grandpa's not here. She goes, no, let's go find Grandpa. And it's like, okay. So she runs out of the room. She runs to the other side of the building where Brad's doing the renovations, goes around the hall, or goes around the wall, points at Brad, which I can't see him, but I know that's where he's at. Points at Brad, looks at me and goes, look, I found him. Yeah. I just start laughing. And Brad is like, what's so funny? And after I can finally compose myself, I tell him that she was like, let's go find Grandpa. And I was like, you're Grandpa. And Brad will at this point want me to tell you he is not actually a grandpa. Yeah. But I look at Brad and I go, well, you know what we're naming the brown ale now, right? Like, it's your beer. It's Grandpa's beer. It's like, we're naming the beer Grandpa.
Yeah.
So a lot of the beers have connections naming wise or recipe wise to either neighborhood or the people associated with Southridge, or a lot of things have connections to the regions those beers originate from. So, for example, we have a Czech dark lager on right now that's called Obec Pivo. So Obec is basically the Czech word for community, and Pivo is the word for beer. So it's community beer, but giving a reference back to that Czech region where it comes from. We have an alt beer that's on right now that's called Rheinduselzeit. Basically, Duselzeit is Dusseltime in German, and alt beers come historically from Dusseldorf, which my family can trace kind of some lineage back to that Rhine region, that North Rhine-Westphalia region. So Rhine is a reference to me in the region that beer comes from, and then that Duselzeit is saying, Dusseltime, let's drink, right? So all of the beers kind of have some sort of connection back to one of those things.
What's your process for making a new beer flavor?
So I was trained by a brewer that was trained in Berlin. So I have a very traditional style of looking at beer. So when I'm looking to make a beer, a lot of times I kind of treat it like I would if I was back in my career writing research. Because I used to be a researcher when I was at the college. I'll go back and I'll start with what are the parameters that are established for this beer style? What are the pieces we're looking to hit? And then once I do that, I'll come back in and say, okay, what little spins or flares do I want to put on it? Do I want to keep very traditional? Do I want to do something a little different? And kind of work back and forth through that, writing the recipe until I feel like it's at a spot that I want. And then we brew it, and then we decide if the next batch, if we want to tweak something, make it a little different, and keep playing with those things until you get to the point where you're happy with it.
Can you do like a small batch to like test it, or do you have to do the whole giant batch to like get an idea of what it's going to be like?
So right now I'm brewing on a very, very small system.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm basically making a bunch of pilot batches, which allows me to play a little bit more. But typically what you would do once we have the new place open and we have the bigger production capabilities, you would start with a small pilot batch, play out there until you find out what you really like, and then upscale that recipe to the larger system. But like I said, right now, we just have a really small system that everything is coming off of. So
we kind of like overviewed the process of getting started, a little bit of the menu, and then the beers, and then like the renovations. Is there anything else you want to touch on with that piece of, or the business piece of it?
I mean, I think, I was talking to one of our chefs the other day about this. I think one of the biggest things that is important to us from a business standpoint is that, they're really kind of like two factors in opening a business, right?
Making money and making more money.
Right?
I'm just kidding.
So there's the mission and then there's the money, right? You have to have both of those things. If you just have the mission and you're not working to look to make money, you're not going to be a successful business. If you are just looking to make money and you don't have a reason for why you're opening this place, you might be successful for a little while, but especially younger consumers, and especially in experiential consumers, which is what we're working in, they see through the lack of authenticity very quickly and very easily. And they don't take, Gordon Gekko types, right? Greed is good. They don't take that very well. So you have to make money, but that can't be your only pursuit. But your mission has to be forefront. And for us, the mission for Southridge Brewing has always been to create a community space for people to hang out and to have a good experience from food and beer, right? Brad, Jen, and I all worked at the same place at one point that was kind of that, where you knew you could walk in on a Wednesday night and you could find your councilman, or you could find, whoever, and you could sit down and have a beer and have a conversation with them. And, that we felt like that was lacking. We wanted to give that type of place back to Wilmington. And one of the things I talk with people about kind of the brewing industry and pubs and things like that, there's this idea in the brewing world right now that craft beer is dying, right? Places are closing. It's not that it's dying. It's the market is maturing. And for years I've been telling people that I think the reality is that we're moving closer to the European pub model, where there is a pub basically on every corner, but that pub understands that they're serving that community, and that's their goal, right? It's generations have run the same pub and they're there to serve that little group of people. Where in the US, when we started a lot of these craft breweries, the idea was like, I'm going to come in, I'm going to make all this money, and I'm going to be this regional brewery. That's not a sustainable model, but kind of the smaller local community model is sustainable. So that's always been our goal from the day one, was that we felt like there was a place we wanted in town that didn't exist. So we were going to create it, and we wanted to be kind of that European model pub style for Wilmington, where you could come hang out, you could find, people in town to talk to. I actually joked the other day. So we have several kind of larger community type tables in the brewery, and there was a group of like 3 sitting at one end of the table. So there's obviously the rest of the table where you could sit at, and to watch some people kind of come in and be like, I feel uncomfortable sitting at a table with strangers. Like, No, that's the point. You should come sit at that table with that stranger because those conversations need to happen more often, right? So we purposely made that decision to put some of those big tables in there, knowing that there were going to be some forced interactions.
Yeah.
Because we need some more forced interactions like that.
Yeah. And even if you don't have conversation, you can eavesdrop better on people's conversation.
That can probably happen too.
I'm just kidding. So Jason Vaughn and I are friends, and one of his takes on the like decline of these microbrewers is that like, the rise in popularity of seltzers and those like alcoholic waters that a lot of like girls and people partying don't want a lot of calories like want to drink. That's like one of his hot takes on it too. I think that plays into it, maybe also a little bit too, that just preferences have kind of changed when new drinks kind of came about.
Yeah, absolutely. Part of the market share has changed of what people are drinking. People are drinking less. But when you actually look at the numbers, the Brewers Association provides great data from across the country. The numbers aren't as down as people really think, right? And especially the numbers of beer that's being consumed out of taps in local places, right? Can sales, things like that are way down, right? People are not choosing to buy a 12 pack of, Miller Lite and go home and drink it. They are making other decisions. And the other thing that's driving, one of the things the BA has really been pushing is what's driving sales is actually flavor. We've got ourselves in the craft beer world, we've kind of painted ourselves into a few corners where we've picked one or two flavors and we're hitting you over the head with those, right? That's why the IPAs were so popular for so long, but we're actually seeing declining sales in IPAs for the first time in years. But the places that are offering flavor options are having better sales. So when you look at things like seltzers, right? You go to a wall in a store that's got seltzers, how many different flavor choices are there? There might be hundreds, where if you go to that same store and you look at the beer selection, we've got 75 IPAs that offer basically one flavor option.
Yeah.
Right. Right. So when we look at, one of my jobs and one of the things we've talked about is quality beer has a ton of flavor. But in the US, we've kind of had this dichotomy of you either get tasteless macro lagers or you get hit over the head with these extreme hoppy IPAs. When in reality, if you drink beer in the rest of the world, that's not what they're drinking. There are these great German lagers or these great European lagers. There's great ales coming out of Belgium and France and all these other places, all these great flavor profiles that no one's really playing with because we basically picked a team. It was lagers or IPAs. Well, no, let's actually explore the full gamut of flavor and beer style options out there. So we have to understand that where we are, our trend lines over the last few years in beer aren't sustainable, but the new directions out there, I think, are, and we just have to understand that.
Yeah. Kind of goes back to like money and mission, not just money.
Yeah.
Or not just mission and going out of business.
Right. Like if my sole goal was to make money selling beer, I would just open a bar and put Miller Lite on tap and find a huge population center. And I'm just going to try to sell as much Miller Lite as I can.
Yeah.
That has no mission to it. There's no reason for me to do that. Let Miller do that.
Yeah. So looking back at like the process of getting started and your product and then your vision for the future, what's like one of the biggest challenges that you faced and like how have you overcome that?
The biggest challenge really is just getting through regulation. It takes time to work with the federal government and the state government and getting all of that stuff in line.
Were you scared doing that? Like, oh, we're not going to get this. Like,
there were definitely meetings where it was like, can we open yet? Like, are we going to be able to have, this lined up? Right. We can't get certain licensing done until we had building occupancy. We can't get building occupancy until we have health department. Like there are all these steps that you have to go through.
Yeah.
And sometimes you'll kind of get to this choke point where it's like all of this is now waiting on a building inspection.
Yeah.
And no one else can approve anything else until that gets done. So I wouldn't say I was scared or anything like that, but I mean, we did push our opening back by about 2-3 weeks because we got to a choke point where we just we couldn't get an approval through. We knew it would all eventually happen. It just didn't happen on our original timeline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that. So we had to do that recently too. And it's like a learning experience, kind of like what you said earlier about going from your master's degree career to like a bartending. Like you learned so much through that experience that empowered you like for the rest of your life. I feel like that experience of you guys having to go through that probably feels so empowered now, but like we can do anything. We can like open another one of these up.
Don't say that too loud. Brad and Jen might try.
Edit that part out. But yeah, so you're open now. You're serving people. What's like been one of your most proud accomplishments now that you're open and getting to interact with your customers?
Honestly, Brad and I get to talk to customers when we're open, and it really, the greatest thing is having them come up after their meal, shake our hand and be like, food's great, beer's great. We're just happy this place is here. Right? That just the confirmation of the niche that we thought needed filled, that we tried to fill, that other people wanted that niche filled. Yeah. And now they're happy with how we've done that. That's probably our greatest accomplishment, is just achieving our mission of what we set out to do.
Yeah. I'm going to project here a bit. So like we have a market now and like there's things that we want to improve upon it, but we get a similar compliment of like, we're glad this exists. And it's like, I'm glad you think that because there's so many things that I need to improve here. So is that like part of you too? Like you get that feedback, but you're like, thank you for saying it. Cause like, I know there's a lot of issues that need to be fixed still.
Yeah. I mean, we know that there are lots of things that we are still working on, that we still want to do. And I think it gives us a little bit of confidence when people say, yes, this is the right path. Yeah. It gives us that confidence to keep going and keep improving. The number of people that are like, oh man, you guys, it'd be great to have a nice beer garden out there. It's like, well, actually that's in the plans, right? We just aren't there yet. So knowing, giving that confidence that, other people kind of share our vision and that we're achieving their vision for them is great.
Yeah. And then the last question about just the business is there any like stigmas or rumors in this past few weeks that have been going around that you've seen online or something that's made you laugh that aren't true?
I don't think there's anything that's going around that's like that are not true. I think there's a lot of people that are from out of town because there is kind of this big brewery tourism idea. So in Ohio, there's this, the Ohio Craft Brewers Association puts out an app that's called Ohio on Tap, where basically you just get rewards for going to all the different breweries in the state. So we get a lot of people that are coming through with that again, and they just don't know that we're a completely different brewery, right? I think a lot of people are coming through thinking that, Browse just rebranded. Like, no, it's completely different ownership, completely different beer, completely different food, like everything's different. So I think that's maybe the only confusion or rumor I've seen is that, it's a rebrand. Like, no, it's a completely different place. And once they come in, kind of experience, they're like, oh yeah, this place is great. We had a bunch of people in from Cincinnati on Saturday that were just like, hey, we hadn't been back here for years. We just didn't like the previous place. And we just now found out that it's a new place, and we had a great time. We'll be back, which is something I hope that we see more in Wilmington. Is businesses that are drawing people from outside the community, so that people see that there are some really cool things in this community.
Yeah, definitely. So now we end up with some philosophical things.
Yeah.
Why is what you do important to our community, and what keeps you passionate?
So again, our mission is to provide a place that is a community gathering spot. we could achieve that in different ways. It just happens to be that our talents are food and beer and service, right? So we could have opened this place in larger population centers. We could have done a different style of place. I could have went back and done production brewing somewhere else, but that doesn't meet the purpose of community development, which is so important, right? I lived here most of my life. I was a part of that group of guys and women that graduated from Wilmington High School, went all around the world, came back and kind of started things, right? Whether it be businesses or working on chamber or starting Energize Clinton County. Like that was my group of guys and women that left and came back and did that. And we saw value in what this place was and what this place can be. So to me, it's special that Southridge Brewing is in Wilmington. And I mean, I could probably almost throw a baseball from our parking lot and hit the house I grew up in. So that I think is important to me.
Yeah, definitely. I think I know some of those people, like Taylor, Desi,
all those. Yeah. We all came from the same time.
That was the time when Wilmington needed you the most. They called you back.
Right.
On DHL.
It was the 2008 time-ish was, it was rough.
What's a quote or a piece of wisdom that has helped guide you? It can be in the past or recent, that you'd want to share with other people.
So I talked a little bit already about the idea of being able to write a new narrative. And that actually came from, so the musician and Americana producer, Joe Henry, he was out at the Nowhere Else Festival and Linford was talking to him. And I don't even remember what the question was that Linford asked him, but if you're around Joe, when he speaks, great things come out a lot. And he was just kind of talking, and in his answer to Linford, he just kind of paused, then said, we as people need to not be so afraid to write new narratives in life. And that was kind of, I've talked about that idea of new narrative and writing new chapters a lot today. And that's kind of where I got that tagline. Like I had always been doing it, but I didn't know what to call it. Right. And when Joe said that, I was like, yeah, that's it. That's what I've been doing. I've been writing new narratives and I'm not afraid to write new narratives. And I wish more people would do that. So if I had to pick, kind of one quote that I might kind of say I live by a little bit, it's that from Joe Henry, is that we as people just need to be more willing to write new narratives, make change.
Do you think it's also like write your own narrative? Because maybe the narrative is like you go to college, you get your career, and your career kind of dictates your life. But it's like, no, you can write your own narrative.
Yeah, 100%. I think we too often want someone else to write the narrative for us. Southridge Brewing doesn't exist if I don't write the narrative. No one else is going to write Southridge Brewing, right? It took Brad, Jen, and I to do that. I think, we just too often get a little complacent with letting someone else dictate a little bit and being uninvolved or being apathetic about what our communal narrative is and what our individual narrative is. And so if we are willing to take control of our own path, you can write some cool stories. But if we don't, I don't know that those cool stories exist.
Yeah. I like that for a lot of reasons I'm not going to get into right now. What would be a positive, real change that you'd want to see in our community of Wilmington?
I think one of the things that we as a community struggle with the most is identity and establishing who we are as a community. And I think it's because we've stopped writing some narratives around here. You'll hear oftentimes that we are an agricultural community. And to some amount we are. But I think a lot of people still think of us as the agricultural community of maybe like the 40s, 50s, 60s, where we really aren't that anymore. yeah, we are surrounded by a lot of farmland, but we as a community, the vast majority of us aren't connected to agriculture.
Mm-hmm.
So holding on to kind of that idea that that's who we are, I think has stopped us from making some change and moving forward, because a lot of those forward changes are, well, that's not an agricultural community. Well, we really aren't either.
Mm-hmm.
So if we don't write what our next narrative is, if we don't write what the future is for us,
Yeah.
I think someone else is going to come in at some point and write that for us.
Yeah.
And I don't know that any of us are going to be really happy with that as a community. So I think some greater community discussions about what we as a town want to be, where we want to go,
Yeah.
and how we achieve those things, is what I would like to see.
Yeah. I'm gonna spill the beans. So you were saying like be in control of your own narrative and stuff. I was thinking about, so I'm like leading this movement from to become a charter city.
Mm-hmm.
And a big part of that is that you have local control of your community to kind of like do things that make sense for your community, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And like part of like my passion too was like, who are we? Like, what's our identity? Like these other communities like Loveland, Lebanon, Miamisburg have like captured their city's like charm in a way almost. And it's like, how can we consistently like wrap it all in a pretty bow and say like, this is Wilmington.
Mm-hmm.
This is the best we have to offer.
Mm-hmm.
So I think like those conversations definitely need to happen, because we have a lot of good stuff here, but it's like, how can we tie it together and say, this is Wilmington, you know?
Right. And I think that's one of our biggest challenges, is just having that identity. You know, I was a part of those 2040, Clinton County 2040 meetings.
Oh, yeah,
and, you know, we were sitting there at one point and someone was explaining what they wanted. And they were talking about all these like boutique shops and all these things that they wanted. And like, and I want a Target. I was like, those two things are diametrically opposed.
Yeah.
You don't, in a community this size, you don't have both those things. And I was like, so how do we define who we are so we know which one of those paths to follow? Right. And, you know, I think, like you said, there's a certain charm and history and just cool things happening in Clinton County and Wilmington that we don't market well, and we don't kind of accept as part of our identity. That if we were to define who we are a little bit better, it gives us a better path of writing where we go. Yeah.
Yeah, because you're right. Like you couldn't have a Target and a small boutique in the same shop, because the Target will shut down the small boutique like instantly.
Yeah.
That's cool. Thanks for chatting with us. Any other closing thoughts?
Oh, well, thanks for having me. I mean, I hope that what we're doing at Southridge Brewing is achieving what we set out to do, and I hope people are enjoying it. And if you guys, you know, out there listening, stop by and try things, please talk to Brad, Jen, or myself. Just let us know what you think, and we're hoping around for a long time to keep being that community space.
Yeah. And if people want to get in touch with you, I guess they can just stop by or get you on social media.
Yeah, stop by, hit us up on social media. We really basically just do Facebook and Instagram. You can also, if you need anything specific, you can email info@southridgebrewing.com, or I can be reached at alex@southridgebrewing.com, and check out our website, southridgebrewing.com.
All right, Alex from Southridge Brewing. Thanks for what you're doing for our community, and thanks for being on our podcast, and we'll talk to you later.
Thank you.
Well, that's it for our podcast today. I hope you enjoyed our interview with our guest, Alex Rhinehart, who is the co-owner and brewmaster at Southridge Brewing on South Street here in Wilmington. If you have any more questions for him or ideas, feel free to reach out directly. If he'll talk to us dorks, he will certainly talk with you as well, because after all, we are a community of empowered individuals. If you want to get in touch with Real Change Wilmington and share your story, you can contact us on our website at realchangewilmington.com. Visit our Facebook or Instagram pages, or grab a free copy of our local newspaper at Kroger, Sam's Meats, and Fiesta Veracruz. We also send our paper direct mail to over 2,500 Wilmington residents a month. So if you want to help us cover our printing cost and advertise your local business, event, or job posting, please email us at advertise@realchangewilmington.com. With that, I'm your host, Dustin Pierce. Keep it real, Wilmington.